Hello and welcome back to the Teacher Experience. I am Miss Wild and this is Miss Dearman. Thank you for tuning in again. We are so lucky to have so many amazing followers now, and we hope you enjoy every episode this season so far. So, as always, if you're a new listener, welcome. Please, can you click off and just go and follow us on either Spotify, Amazon, or YouTube? It helps us so much and it means we can reach more people. Also, if you have listened and would like to leave us a review, we would be really, really grateful. So today we are really, really lucky that we are going international and we are absolutely thrilled to welcome Priscilla. Priscilla graduated from San Diego State University in 2023 and is now a student teacher for third grade. Not only is Priscilla a teacher, but she is also a small business owner, a content creator, and recently a podcast host. A few of her favourite things are Gossip Girl, The Subject of Science, which is our personal favourites, and of course Tay Tay, aka Taylor Swift. Today we will be talking about the similarities and differences between the UK and US education systems. So without further ado, welcome Priscilla.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I know it took us a lot to be here, but I'm glad we made it work. Honestly, I'm just so excited to just have a conversation. That's like my biggest thing, especially across the world. That's just crazy that technology can bring us together, and it's just so exciting. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's so great that we finally get to actually have these conversations internationally, and as a teacher community, we can stretch globally. I think it's amazing. So on this podcast, we like to start our podcast with a what went well and an even better if from our week. So for this week, what is your what went well?
So this week, I'm actually focusing in California. We do this thing called an EdTPA, where teachers have to record their lessons while they're student teaching, and then do a crazy, insane write-up commentary about it. And then we submit these things to the state of California, and then that's how we figure out if we're a good teacher. So this week, wow. I focused on recording all those lessons. So I did Monday, I did 2 lessons. Tuesday, I usually have class, so I don't go into my placement. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm recording my lessons, and they're recorded. Some kids have to be out of frame because I don't have media permission slips for them. So it's a whole setup, and it's so not real, honestly, because that's not a real classroom, and you're just putting on a show just to get that credential. But honestly, it went so well. And I'm just excited to get those lessons over with.
Yeah. Oh, congratulations for getting it done. We did you say you call it EdPTA?
EdTPA.
TPA. What does it stand for something?
If it does, I have no idea, because in education we just use acronyms for everything, and sometimes I don't even know what they stand for.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many acronyms, it's ridiculous. So yeah, is that part of your teacher qualification that you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, so once I submit that in May, the first week of May, and then I get my results at the end of May, and then I'm a credentialed teacher after that. So
amazing. That's so exciting. How many do you have to submit?
So you submit, it's just one submission, but there's 12 tasks or something like that. It's task 1, task 2, it's so many stuff, honestly. So
wow, that's incredible. So is that 12 observations or just 12 separate tasks?
So for observations are completely different. Okay. So we do observations through our program, but then these are just recorded. It's you, maybe the teacher, the mentor teacher that you're with. It's just they're watching you, but these are mostly for yourself to make that submission. So and you don't submit all 5 lessons. You only submit 20 minutes worth, which is even crazier because you have to pick really good 20 minutes because that's your only chance. So it's mostly about the write-up, because it's pages and pages long, that you're actually able to tell them why you did what you did. So it's a lot.
Oh wow, that's so interesting. So is that for every teaching route, or is that just for the teaching route that you've chosen?
So I'm a multiple subject teaching. So I think single subject has to do it as well, but I'm not sure how that looks like.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Thank you. It's really, I think this is why part of the reason we wanted to have this conversation, because obviously you guys will have your own way of becoming a teacher that us UK teachers don't know the routes that you take and how it works and stuff. So I know that our teachers have the opportunity to use, we call it Iris. So it's how they record their self-teaching, and then we can either get our student teachers to submit that as their formal observation, and it can get looked at,
Okay.
or at the moment, so for one of my trainee teachers, so I look after all of the trainee teachers, and for one of my trainee teachers, I've asked her to do it as a low stakes, doesn't need to be submitted for anything, but I've asked her to do it so that she can watch it back and do an observation on herself to see where she thinks her gaps are and where she thinks she did really well and where she thinks she could improve. And I've actually said to her that I will do it as well for myself, just so that we can sort of start to see our own teaching. But it's so weird watching yourself back, isn't it?
Yeah, I was about to say that. I'm like, okay, that's kind of very parallel because that's how our observations are done. We have supervisors that will come the day of our observation. We have to record ourselves just for that reflecting part. So that's really similar. And we do have to make comments. And it's just like, it's so cringy. Like, you're just like, oh my God, why did I say that?
I think in the UK, Miss Wild would be equivalent to your supervisor.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
that's what the same is.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting, isn't it? How we all just have different names for the same job.
Yeah, the same exact, like.
Yeah, the equivalent, but completely different names. Makes everything so confusing.
I know, it really does.
Yeah, so thank you. I've totally diverged there, but that's part of the reason for this podcast, so it's all good. So for this week, what would be your even better if for this week?
Okay, so my even better than that, I'm trying to think. Definitely has to be. So I have an interview coming up on Tuesday. So I am preparing for it. I have not talked about it anywhere just because I'm internalizing it right now. I'm like, I don't know if this is happening, but it's happening. So
Oh my God, hot off the
I have
press.
an interview on Tuesday and I'm so nervous, but I'm just so excited because it's just starting to feel so real. Just I'm almost done. I'm like, by the end of the week, if I really do good on the interview and I enjoy the people that are in there and I really like community, so if the school matches with my own values, I'm totally gonna say yes. So hopefully it all works out. So
fingers crossed. Have you I don't know if you might have seen her on our Instagram or if you've seen it through the Instagram teacher community. There's a lovely lady called the Petite Primary.
I feel like that name sounds familiar.
Have a look, because although she's UK based, she does a lot of she specializes in essentially trainee teachers getting their first teaching job. So it might be good to have a look on her page and just look at regular interview questions that get said, and she does a lot of top tips and stuff.
Oh my God, yes, definitely. I love listening to podcasts. It's the perfect I can do something but also be entertained. That's my favorite part about it.
You get so much information but without the cognitive overload. So next, we'd quite like to hear about what your typical day currently looks like.
Yeah, so a couple of months ago was a little different than it is now because now I was subbing. Now I just transitioned into my student teaching placement. So I start at 7:30. So I wake up. I try to sleep as much as I can, even if it's an extra 5 minutes. So I'll normally be up by I push it 6:30. And then I have to leave my house by 7. And thankfully, my school where I'm at is pretty close to my house, so I don't have a long commute or anything. So because it's a new teacher, new environment, I'm I get there and I'm just okay, what do you need me to do? Last semester when I was in my different placement, in my 3rd grade placement, I felt so comfortable and I was okay, this is what we're getting done. So it's I'm back to square one a little bit.
Yeah.
So I get there, I put my lunch away, and then we kind of go through our day. Okay, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And then since I've been doing my lessons, usually in the morning, I'll like prep all my worksheets, I'll do the copies, whatever they need to get done. And because I'm only on my second week there, starting this week, I'm going to start taking over. But lately, I've just been, if it's not my lesson, I'm just observing or like walking around the classroom. If there's behavior problems, I'm like, sit down, look at the teacher, you're not paying attention. So I'm just like class managing the classroom. Then we have our races around like 9:30, which is so great, honestly. Like I'm like, okay, this little.
So recess is like their break time, right? Where they get to go out and
Yeah,
play.
they have a snack and then they play for a little bit. And it's usually about 30 minutes, which is actually kind of long because in my previous school, recess was about maybe like almost 20 minutes. So it's actually
So are you
really
with the same age group at the moment?
No. So I was in third grade last semester and then I subbed kinder and I just transitioned same to kinder.
Okay.
Yeah. So they need a little bit longer breaks.
Which one do you think you're preferring at the moment?
That
Third.
was strong.
Yeah. So much work. I love third. That's what I'm hoping for the interview. So
I'm really curious, how many pupils or students do you have in each classroom? So typically in a UK classroom, we'll have 30. So how many do you
30,
have in
that's
your
a lot.
classroom?
That's a lot. So in my third grade classroom, we have 25. In my last subbing placement, we had 27, which is 2 past the threshold. And
I would say 30, 32 seems to be about average in a UK
and
school.
it's not like an elementary, middle school, like all throughout. Like that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I'm
can't
not
even
sure.
imagine like having like 5 more bodies in that room.
Yeah, I'm not sure for what we call your kindergarten is our reception. I'm not sure how many are normally in reception. Do you?
When our students go through each year group or grade, they stay as a class, don't they? So I'd imagine reception is still 30 because it will go, they start as 30 and they always in classes of 30
That's
throughout,
really
surely.
interesting.
It's
And
really
do they
hard.
stay together all like obviously unless someone like moves all throughout like high school?
Yeah.
That's
Well, it's
crazy.
Yeah. So we have primary school, which is your elementary school, and then we have secondary school, which is your middle school and high school put together.
Kindergarten would be like 5-year-olds, and that's already considered like elementary. Like kinder is attached to elementary, but then we also have like TK, which is under kinder. That's for like 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
And then TK usually gets dismissed like a lot earlier, so it's not a full school day for them.
Yeah.
But it'll be like TK, kinder, all the way through sometimes 5th or 6th grade. So 6th grade, they're about, my little sister's in 6th grade, she's 12.
okay.
Yeah.
So
that's very similar to us.
Yeah. So then sometimes some schools do it differently where 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade will be called middle school.
What age are they when they start high school?
High school, they're about 14. They start at 14. Yeah.
And then what age do they finish high school?
So if you have a birthday from October and on, then you're usually 17. But if not, then you're pretty much 18 when you graduate.
Cool. So that it ends at the same point. Everything else in the middle is just a bit more fluid than it is here, I think.
Yeah.
Interesting. Sorry, we totally got in the way of your day.
Oh no, you're fine. No, that's so interesting too. I'm like, I wanted to hear more about that.
So I think we got to like what you do during the day. So we got to recess, didn't we?
Yeah.
So what happens after recess?
So then we come in and they're usually like a little chaotic because they were just chaotic outside for 30 minutes. So it usually takes like a good like 15 minutes we try to do like a calming activity for them. And then we move on to like math or writing or whatever we were working on previously because it usually gets cut off by that like recess time. So that that little period between recess and lunch goes by so fast because it's like calming down, finish up your work, do this little activity, and then go to lunchtime. And that's usually happens around like 11:40. So, and the kiddos we take the kiddos to the cafeteria and they get dismissed, and then us teachers can have our lunch, which that's my favorite part.
Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. That was really interesting. You personally, do you do much after school?
No, other than I'm finishing up my classes right now, but usually after school, either I will help the teacher prep anything that we have going on for the next day, or we'll just be like, make a game plan, like, okay, what are you going to be doing this week? Or like, because we usually have meetings with our supervisors. So we just kind of like, we're like, okay, what are we doing? What are you doing? Let's make sure we're on the same page. And then I'll usually go home. I will only stay maybe about 30 minutes, sometimes 40 to an hour if there's a lot that needs to be talked about. But then I go home, usually have classes, or homework or something to turn in. There's always something. But yeah, that's usually what it looks like.
It's quite a busy day, isn't it? It's quite full on. I remember my teacher training year, just learning. I teach secondary school pupils, so they are aged sort of 12 to 18.
That's
so
a lot.
So I teach A levels, which is what's taught in your high school. And I had to teach myself. I had to teach myself the content again. So I only teach biology at high school level, and I have to teach myself it over and over again because it's such hard content. And I remember my teacher training year having to relearn. It took me so long to plan lessons and make sure everything that was perfect as it could be.
Yeah,
So I
because you have to be
completely
ready to answer those questions. And you don't know what questions are going to come at you.
Yeah, exactly. So I tried to absorb as much information as I could because I didn't want to be in a situation where I didn't know an answer to a question. So I'm really curious to know why you went into teaching. Is it something that you always knew you wanted to be, or?
Yeah, so looking back, I remember because I'm the older sibling and I'm pretty much the oldest in my cousins. So during their summer, we would always spend it together, and I would make them do homework during the summer. I was the teacher, like that was the fun part, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, like Priscilla, like we don't want to do this," and I'm like, "Well, you have to do it because it's due in 12 minutes." So I would always play teacher all the time, and they would just follow along because I would tell them to, and they had to listen to the teacher. So that was like a huge game of mine when I was little. And then I got into middle school, and then I had just finished learning English because I actually learned English in 5th grade. That's when I moved here from Mexico. So I learned English. I got to 7th grade and I met this amazing teacher. She was my English teacher, and she like taught me like the love for writing, honestly. And that was like the one time where I was like, oh my God, like I love talking to her. I'm like, she's such a good teacher. She cares about me. And to this day, I'm like, even because my sister had her 4 years after I was done. And then she's like, that one teacher. And we always get caught like having those conversations. I'm like, remember that one teacher? And then we like fangirl about this teacher to this day. So then I graduated high school and I was like, okay, what am I going to do? This is so scary. I have to make a choice. And then I was like, okay, I don't know what to do, but like I've always liked teaching. Like I thought back into like the little games I used to play when I was little, and I was like, I love kids, so I went into that for that. And then I got a little scared and I was like, I don't know. So I took a break for like 2 years, and I was like, okay, like I'm gonna just work and then I'm gonna figure it out because I don't know if I want to keep going. I just kind of got sidetracked. And then I took those 2 years off. I worked, and then I met my boyfriend, and then he's like, okay, so like, what are you doing? Like, we're just having a conversation. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, well, what were you doing? I was like, well, like a teacher. And he's like, well, go, keep going, like, so he kind of like pushed me a little bit. And I think I needed that. So I went back. I was in community college at this point. I went back, finished my associate's degree, and then I applied to San Diego State, got denied. That was heartbreaking. but I was like, that's my dream school. I'm going to wait another year. And then he worked in San Diego, so we wanted to move to San Diego no matter what. So I was like, let's just wait another year. I worked for another year. And then I applied again. I was so scared because nothing had changed. I already graduated. The only thing I changed was I was like, okay, I'm going to put my aunt's address and pretend I live in San Diego. So I changed that, and then I got accepted. So then I went to school, I got my bachelor's, and then I applied to the credential program, and then now I'm here. I'm almost done with my credential program, which is so exciting. And now I'm hoping to do my master's next year.
That's such a great story. It's so nice to hear that you had the support of your partner throughout. I had a really similar story. I kind of knew I wanted to be a teacher from quite young, but then I had a bit of a freak out when I was at university getting my bachelor's, and I digressed for a couple of years. And then eventually, when I lived with my partner, we had the same conversation. And I don't think if it was for him and the support, I would have had the courage to actually go and do it, because it meant quitting my job. It meant not having a proper income for a year as I was training to be a teacher. So it's so nice that you obviously had the support from him, and you also had the courage to hold out for your dream college, university.
I think
That's
that
so
was the
nice.
hardest thing. Definitely being like, okay, I really want to do this, but it's a long commitment and it's a long process. So I was like, am I ready
Yeah.
for it? No.
Yeah, no, it's huge, and it's such a big step to take, especially if, for example, it was my situation. I had a stable career, a stable job. I was moving away from something to not be paid for a year. That's really scary. So we have this really good system in the UK where if you want to train to be a teacher, it will cost everyone the same amount of money, regardless to what college, university you go to. It will cost £9,000 to train, just about that. So I'm curious, is that the same in the US? Regardless
Okay,
to where you go, is it the same?
so it's 2 semesters. So it'd be the fall semester and then spring semester. And each semester is about 4,500-ish. So it's pretty much the same. It equals to a little bit under 10K. So yeah, that's pretty.
And every university charges the same in America?
No. I would have no idea what other universities charge. That would just be San Diego State.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So every university charges the same in the UK,
That's
regardless to
me.
whether you're a secondary teacher, a science teacher, an English teacher, it doesn't matter. They have to charge the same price.
Wow, that's
Which is
really
really
crazy.
good because
Yeah.
there's no sort of privilege aspect to it. It's the same price for everyone, regardless to
Yeah.
how good the university is on the university rankings or how low they are. It has to be the same price. So it is really good.
And is the
We also,
program, sorry.
no,
And
carry
is
on.
the program the same all throughout? Is it pretty similar? Is there a lot of parallels or can it differ per school, even though it's the same price?
So it's very different across the board. So this is routes into teaching are very different. So there's a lot of different routes you can take. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. So there's a charity called Teach First. That's the route I took. And that way you get what we call a postgraduate diploma in education. But Teach First pay for that. So you don't pay for it, Teach First pay for it. And they have a contract with the schools that you go into, that you go straight into teaching with your normal degree, and then you go straight into teaching whilst doing your postgraduate diploma on the side. But Teach First are paid for that, and the contract they have with the schools is that the schools have to give you a salary. So that's a nice way of doing it. You've got another route, which is the postgraduate certificate into teaching, which is what Miss Dearman did. Now, again, there's a few different ways you can do that. You can pay for it yourself, depending on the subject. Sometimes there's a bursary towards it. Sometimes you do it as part of your first degree. So there's a lot of different options there. normally for like maths, English and science, there's normally a bursary, isn't there? And anything sciencey is definitely normally has a bursary.
So by bursary, we mean, for example, the UK government gave me £26,000 to train to be a teacher, which is a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if you're a physics teacher or a computer science teacher, they'll give you £30,000.
Wow, that's
and they'll
really
pay you. It's really good. I don't think that's common worldwide for them to give you that much money.
Definitely no. Yeah. The only amount of income that I could receive right now, I was receiving income when I was substitute teaching. So I did that for 2 months. And we can substitute teach for our mentor teachers if they want like a day, like I don't know, if they have like a meeting or they have something else going on, we can step in for the day. So that would be like the only income. And I think they just added that because I'm pretty sure that's pretty new to the program.
Okay. That must be quite hard for a lot of people looking to get into teaching, because I had a mortgage to pay when I was training to be a teacher, and without the £26,000 that they gave me, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I genuinely wouldn't have been able to pay my mortgage.
Did you have to pay for your degree as well?
Yeah.
So you paid for your degree?
My £9,000, yeah.
So you paid £9,000 for your degree?
Yeah.
But then they paid you
26.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. The other route we've got as well is it's called Schools Direct. You don't have to get a postgraduate teaching qualification. You actually, if you've been, essentially, it's when you've been working in a school as an unqualified teacher for a particular amount of time, what happens is you can apply for Schools Direct or an assessment only route, where they will essentially come in and give you qualified teacher status over 12 weeks. So you just need, it's quite intense. You need to write essays, you need a formal observation every single week.
Oh my God.
Then you can get your qualified teacher status without having to do a postgraduate qualification. And that's free. You don't pay for that. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it. I think essentially in the UK, what they're trying to do is give a lot of different routes into teaching because there's a teacher crisis.
At the moment, we don't have a lot of teachers in the UK. It's like Miss Wild says, we're in a teacher crisis at the moment. And a lot of that is due to workload and things like that. It's a lot, like I just said, we've got about 32 in a class. The number of hours we teach a week is quite high. Is it similar in the US at all?
Yeah, I think that's really similar, like all throughout, but not because teachers aren't really like graduating or anything like that. I think teachers are just leaving the profession after just a couple of years of being in it, just because of those long hours and behaviors that we see in the classroom, or like just having like staff that's not supportive. And I think that's the biggest like factor why teachers leave, which is totally understandable. And I think that's where you get like that negativity into teaching. But then it's like there is good schools. I've been in schools where the community's great and the staff is great, and like yes, there's behaviors, but that support just like makes everything worthwhile, honestly. And I've seen that in these past 2 schools that I'm in. So I know there are great schools out there, even if the schools aren't like a top school, you know, like these schools are still Title I schools. And I think that's just like the main reason why there's a teacher crisis here too. It's just teachers are leaving after just a couple of years. So then new teachers are stepping into those classrooms with like crazy issues.
So I'm curious, what's the best bit of advice you've ever been given, and how has that made you be successful in your role?
One advice that I've been given, every advice every teacher gets is just like, remember your why. I know we've all like heard it, like, remember your why. That's like the biggest thing. And it sounds so like cliche and it sounds so cheesy, but also like, if you go back to like, okay, why did I start this? Like, because I have gotten in like negative mindsets and been like, oh my God, like this is so hard. I have to do this. And I'm not even making money right now. it's so easy to get into that like negative space. But I think if you just like go back to like the beginning, go back to the basics, like why are you doing this? For the kids, for the future. Like you're like, how lucky are you that you get to teach these kids that are like little babies, they don't know anything. Like they're gonna remember you one day. So if you just have those right intentions, I think as a teacher, like you're gonna do great. And if you have like the right focus in mind, even like when you get like those negative things coming at you or like hard days coming at you, I think just like going back to, okay, like that kid did not do that personally. I'm not going to take that personally. You know, like it's so easy to be like, oh my God, I'm so upset. Like that kid, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, okay, like you don't know what their experience is like at home. Like these kids are coming in with different experiences, different backgrounds, like different family values. And it's just, you're there to support them and you're there to like give them your everything.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's such great advice, and it's something that I even come back to now. So I'm on year am I on? 4? I think I'm on year 4 now of teaching, and I still come back to that. It honestly goes by so fast. That does include my training year. So I have my training year, and then now I've been teaching for 3 years, and I always have to come back to the why. Time just goes so quickly, especially now I live my life in half terms, which is the school year. So time just goes quicker. It's really obvious that you really love your job and that you really care about the kids. And we need more people to be coming through the education system and wanting to be teachers, but we also need people staying and coming back to their why and remembering why they became teachers. It's so important. So thank you so much for sharing that. It's been so interesting to have this conversation with you and seeing how different it is with the US and the UK. I'm actually feeling, I don't know about you, but I'm actually feeling really grateful for the different opportunities actually there is in our country and free opportunities to become teachers. From what you were saying and what we were saying, there's only sort of the paid route for you guys. So thank you so much for sharing everything that you've shared today, and logging in very early in the morning, because there is an 8-hour time difference between us. So we're very grateful.
I know, I'm so glad we made it work. I'm so glad to be here and just like have this conversation even across the world. Like how amazing that we can even like make those connections and have a conversation about teaching, because I think more people should have those conversations.
Yeah. And for our listeners, can you please tell them where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Learn with Miss R. I also have a TikTok, but I don't post there as consistently as I do on Instagram. I'm posting there every single day on Instagram, and I'm just sharing my journey. Honestly, like I share what I want, I share my favorites and what I love, and I share a lot of positivity. So if you need like a positive light into teaching, like definitely go follow me there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners again for tuning in. We will see you next episode.